Hello everybody, Jeremy Dickinson here. In this video I want to say a few words about what philosophy is, and in order to do so what I want to do is just think about Western philosophy, the philosophy that arises from the ancient Greek tradition, beginning with figures like Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. And I just want to just see if I can say a few words about the major subdisciplines that philosophers study. So what do philosophers study as a way of helping us understand what philosophy itself is? Well, there's the subdiscipline of philosophy known as metaphysics. When philosophers do metaphysics, they're by and large trying to figure out, well, what exists. When we look to the world, we see many things out in the world. We see tables, chairs, trees, carrots, and giraffes, and people, and cats and dogs, and all kinds of things. Well, we may end up arguing that those things exist, but we may want to do so in a more systematic way where we generalize and we say, oh, material objects exist. Or we might want to say that artifacts exist, or we might want to say that living things exist, or we might want to say that other kinds of objects exist as we look at the world and we categorize the world into different kinds of things. And as we do this, we might have to do some work in individuating the different kinds of things that there are. And in doing so, we start doing what's also part of metaphysics, and that's identifying the natures or the essences of the things that exist. So metaphysics is by and large, though not completely, because there's many questions that are answered or dealt with, I should say, in metaphysics. We're concerned with that which exists, and maybe to put it best would be say that which ultimately exists, and what the nature of those things that ultimately exist are. We want to know what the natures are of those things that ultimately exist, and so that's metaphysics. For an example of a traditional metaphysical question: does God exist? Another example might be: do we have free will? Another question might be: what is human nature? Is there such a thing as human nature, and if so, what is it? As you can see from these questions that I'm generating from thinking about the history of metaphysics, you see that philosophy is concerned with, metaphysics is concerned with some of the big questions, and sometimes maybe this is why sometimes philosophy is understood as the discipline that's concerned with the big questions. Does God exist? Do we have free will, etc., etc., etc.? Okay, that's another major subdiscipline of philosophy is called epistemology. Epistemology is the study of knowledge. So we want to know what knowledge is, and we want to know if we have it, and if we do, in what kinds of ways do we have it, and how much knowledge do we have? How limited is it? So philosophers, when they do epistemology, they might begin by saying, well, we know that we have true beliefs. That means we have beliefs about the world, and some of those beliefs correspond to the world, and so some of our beliefs are true. So it's a true belief that you're watching this video of me right now, discussing what philosophy is. Now, in order to gain knowledge, philosophers think you need to add to true belief, because you can get lucky about your true beliefs. You may get lucky, for example, in truly believing that you're going to win the lottery, but we wouldn't want to say, when we're careful about our thinking about these issues, that someone knows that they're going to win the lottery prior to having done so, because there's just not enough evidence in favor of that belief in the first place. So we need to add to true belief, and some, at least historically, some philosophers have believed that what we need to do is we need to add the idea of justification, sufficient justification, evidence, sufficient evidence, in order to get the proper account of knowledge. Now that view of knowledge has been challenged, famously or infamously, depending on your view here, in the second part of the 20th century. I'm not going to get into that here. Just want to let you know that there is debate here on this topic, but traditionally philosophers want to ask, what do we need to add to true belief in order to gain knowledge? And then once you build in, say, justification or some other idea, then we can ask the questions. Well, do we ever have a sufficiently justified true belief, or whatever else, however else we're going to analyze knowledge? Do we ever have that? And if you answer that question no, then you're a skeptic. Or if you say it's impossible, then you're a skeptic of a more perhaps radical sort. So the skeptic is someone who denies that we have knowledge. Now, you can go on and say, if you answer yes, that we do have it, well then now you have some work to do. Well, how much knowledge do we have? In what kinds of ways do we have it? Do we have knowledge that transcends our senses? Or do we have knowledge that only pertains to our senses? Can we have knowledge that through our reasoning, or can we only have knowledge through our reasoning? So there's different theories that are out there, and different epistemologists are going to offer different answers. So that's a major subdiscipline of philosophy epistemology. And if you've seen, say, the movie The Matrix, or movies where you find that the characters are put in a predicament according to which they can't tell whether they are part of some computer-generated program, or whether they're dreaming or awake or whatever. You're dealing with issues involving skepticism. The skeptic pushes the person who claims we have knowledge to rule out these possibilities. I won't go too into detail on those things, but think about the movie The Matrix, for example. It's inspired by skeptical considerations, and skepticism is a proper part of the subdiscipline of epistemology. And some epistemologists, they try to refute skepticism. Others try to promote skepticism and argue for it. Okay, enough said about that for now. Okay, then there's the subdiscipline known as ethics. And ethics concerns thinking about issues involving, like, what's good, what's bad, what's right, what's wrong, what kind of life should we live, what's the best life for us to live. And another crucial issue within ethics is how these two sets of concepts, if you will, relate to each other. That is to say, how do goodness and rightness, how do badness and wrongness connect with each other? Are they necessarily connected, or are they just generally connected, or maybe they're not connected at all? We needn't resolve these issues. I'm just trying to give you a sample of the kinds of questions. So when we deal with questions involving goodness and badness, you're dealing with questions involving value and disvalue, they're sometimes called, and you're working out what's called a value theory. And there you try to identify the things that are of value, the things that are valuable such that we should pursue them with respect to our actions and respect to our lives. And then when you deal with issues involving rightness and wrongness, we're concerned with how we should live our lives, because it seems intuitively like we should live in accordance with that which is right. The right actions are going to be the ones that we should live up to. The wrong ones are the ones that we should avoid doing. So there's a tight connection, perhaps a conceptual connection, philosophers say, between that which is right and that which we should do, and that which is wrong and that which we should not do. And so when you work out a theory of rightness or wrongness, you're working out a theory, what's called normativity, a normative theory. So those are four central concepts within ethics. And so you might imagine someone who works out a theory that says that, well, what's good ultimately is happiness, it's being happy, and individually and perhaps even collectively. And then they say, well, given that that happiness is a thing that's desirable, or that it's valuable, or valuable for its own sake, sometimes it's said, valuable intrinsically, sometimes it's said, then what we need to do when we work out our theory of how we should live, our theory of right action, well, we line it up with what's good, and we say that we should just perform actions that bring about the most valuable thing, or the intrinsically valuable thing, namely happiness, myself and happiness for all. And so that's one possible way of developing an ethical theory. And as you can imagine, philosophers come along and say, no, happiness, and even happiness for all, isn't just what matters. There are other things that matter. And those who come along and say that, yeah, these things may matter, but they don't matter ethically, but they matter in some other way, or non-ethically. And what really matters, ethically speaking, is one's intention when one performs an action, as opposed to the things that follow from one's actions. So I don't mean to settle any debates here. I just mean to offer a few different theories, ethical theories, and sketch-like theories at that. I mean, these aren't really worked-out theories, but just sketches of some ideas here that ethicists in the history of philosophy have concerned themselves with. So we have metaphysics. Okay, think about existence and the existence of things, what generally exists, what ultimately exists. And then there's epistemology, and there you should be thinking about knowledge. Okay, and then there's ethics, and we should be thinking about the good life, about goodness, badness, rightness, and wrongness. Now, within each of these major subdisciplines, there's a whole lot more that happens. It would be well beyond the scope of this video lecture to say more about that. Okay, so that's what I wanted to say about what philosophy is. Maybe the last thing that I'll just gesture at is logic, because some philosophers may want to say that logic is really a proper part of philosophy. Others might want to say no, it's just a tool that's used within philosophy and anything else that we do, for that matter. And I don't want to settle that debate, so I'm just going to just say that some philosophers might want to say that logic belongs to philosophy as a special major subdiscipline of philosophy, and others might want to just say that it's a major tool that we use within philosophy. And no matter which answer you give here, it's a significant part of philosophy, whether it's a tool or it's a major subdiscipline of its own. And so just a couple words about what logic is, setting aside those issues, or the issue of whether or not logic is a proper part of philosophy. You just say that it's the study of proper reasoning. When we do philosophy, we want to make sure that we're reasoning properly. So we want to follow the right kinds of rules as we reason our way to conclusions that we're arguing for when we do philosophy. So philosophy is about a lot of things, and it may be in part about offering arguments for what we do. It may be dominantly about that, and you may say that's what distinguishes, say, philosophy from some practices like religion, where in religion, even though arguments may be given for the positions that are argued for, there may be more sort of dogmatic acceptance, or there may be just more faith acceptance, if that's maybe a fair way of putting it, in the religious texts that are available to the adherents, to the theologian who's working out a theory of religion, or to the religionist who's working out a particular argument for a particular view within the religion. And the philosopher, by and large, doesn't want to begin with having faith in certain doctrines in advance. They want to offer as many arguments as they can and have as few assumptions as possible. But that may not be exactly right in capturing the difference between philosophy and religion. But I'm just gesturing at something that the philosopher may be able to say distinguishes philosophy from religion. Now, it may turn out that even the philosopher has to rely on certain first principles to get started, certain things that they accept and have to accept as true moving forward. But that would still be different from accepting something, some text, because it's believed to be somehow divine or sacred, etc., etc. Okay, we may, as philosophers, begin with starting points that seem most obvious to us, and that's where we have to go. Okay, now that's to say nothing disparagingly about religion compared to philosophy. That's just to say that could be one key way in which they differ. And I don't mean to draw even a perfect line here, or even suggest that there is a perfect line between practicing philosophy and practicing religion. Just want to gesture again at something that may distinguish the two. That may be a candidate that gets us thinking about the difference between the two disciplines. Okay, so that's what I wanted to say about philosophy. So the question of this video really is, what is philosophy? And I hope that at its end now you have a better sense of what philosophy is, even if not perfect. And I hope that this video helps out with your thinking about philosophy in your lives. Thank you very much for watching. Bye-bye.